everybody. So I just want to introduce myself. My name's Dayna Northart. I'm a psychology intern at the Counseling Services. And I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Laurie Wesely. I'm one of the psychologists at Counseling Services.
So today we're going to talk about emotions, everything about emotions, why we have emotions, how to feel emotions, how to not feel emotions. So to get us started, I wanted to show a clip, and this is actually a movie that is coming out by Pixar next summer, and it's on emotions. So I want you to pay attention. At the beginning of the clip, there's like a bunch of different Pixar movies that they show clips of, and just notice how you're feeling as you're watching those clips, and then we'll chat about it a bit. Gosh darn it. Because I muted it. Okay, let's try this again.
Hands up, everybody. It's showtime.
This isn't very loud. Maybe we could do something here. It's not very loud. Well, YouTube's not playing very loud. Let's give that a shot.
Yeah, hopefully these other people won't.
Okay. Okay, hopefully this will work.
Hands up, everybody. It's showtime.
Grab shell, dude!
Ready?
Ready!
Oh boy, oh boy. Let's go.
Look it.
You got a problem, buddy? Do you?
Where is my super suit?
Spit that out right now!
You mean you don't like me?
So long, partner.
I'm joy. This is sadness. That's anger. This is disgust. And that's fear. Come on, group hug. You too, anger.
Don't touch me.
All right. So with all of those emotions that we saw come up in that video, watching the clips beforehand, I think were really good examples of how even just watching a movie can really bring up some emotions in us. And for me, that clip from Up, when he looks over at the chair and it's empty, it gets me every time. I tear up every time I see that movie. And so it's just, we wanted to show that as a short example of what emotions can be like even in movies. So to start off with, some of the emotions that they talked about in that movie are some of the things we want to talk about today. So these are what are called basic emotions. They're emotions that everybody kind of has as a baseline. We all have very similar reaction tendencies when these come up. And what that means is when we experience each of these emotions, there's some sort of action that our mind and our body try to take. So when we get angry, we tend to want to confront that and assert ourselves and defend ourselves. When people get sad, we tend to want to seek support or we withdraw. Surprise or excitement is kind of one of those emotions that helps us open up and want to connect with other people. Disgust and shame are kind of connected to one another, and when we experience those, our reaction tendency is to kind of like close up and hide. When you feel shameful of something that you did, you don't really want other people to see it, so you kind of close in on yourself. Fear has that fight or flight reaction, so you're either going to want to run away from it or fight back. And then with fight or flight, they now say fight, flight, or flee, or freeze, because sometimes we freeze up in a situation when we get really scared. And then joy is another emotion that is actually really something that can make us feel really vulnerable, even though it's a positive emotion, because it makes us want to get in touch with other people, make contact with other people, and share in that joy, and that leaves us open to kind of be shot down. So with these emotions come a lot of vulnerabilities. So there's this study that they did in exploring emotions, because emotions are pretty universal. And what they found is facial expressions are fairly universal. They used to say facial expressions are completely universal, and then they found that in some cultures they've adapted some facial expressions to express emotions differently. So in order to try to understand emotions on a universal level, there was this really cool study that they did, and it was really ingenious the way that they did it, was studying people's facial reactions at the Olympics. So what that does is that it gets a pool of people from all over the world, so we can study people from all these different countries. And they check their facial reactions as soon as an event finished. So the first thing when somebody finishes an event that they tend to do is they look up at the scoreboard. Did I medal? Did I make it? Where am I up there? And they check that. Is there that joy there? Is there that disappointment there? Is there shame there? What happened? So here's a clip on what that study found.
We can tell how other people are feeling just by looking at them. When someone is happy, they smile. When they are sad, they frown. But where do these facial expressions come from? Are they learned or are they innate? David Matsumoto studied these questions for years in his Culture and Emotion Research Lab at San Francisco State.
Facial expressions are so important because they are part of a nonverbal communication system that we all have, that we use extensively when we communicate with others. Facial expressions comment on the words in many different ways so that you know that a person may be joking or they may be very serious. I think this is why we have emoticons in email. Facial expressions are very difficult to study in the lab because when people are in the lab, they're watching what they're doing. And so oftentimes what you get in the laboratory is not what occurs in real life.
David realized there was a better setting to study expressions, the 2004 Summer Olympic Games. It just so happened he was headed there anyway, as a researcher for the International Judo Federation.
And the Olympics is the perfect place to do one of these studies because it's real life, it's naturalistic, it's very emotional.
He then turned his eye and the camera toward the Paralympic Games.
By studying the expressions of the blind athletes in the Paralympic Games, and then comparing them to the expressions of the athletes in the sighted, the regular Olympic Games, we can tell whether they have the same expressions or not.
And the result?
Those who won showed signs of true enjoyment. Those who lost showed sadness or distress or fear or anger. And they were the exact same facial muscle movements that occurred in both the sighted and the blind. They occurred at both exactly the same times in exactly the same ways. And they differentiated winners and losers in exactly the same ways. And so the findings were amazingly similar. So the study of the blind athletes in the Paralympic Games showed us conclusively that the source of facial expressions of emotions must be resident in some innate biological program that we all have, that we're born with, and that we have from birth, and that everybody all around the world, as long as you're a human, has that. And I think that that's a very powerful message that this study shows.
So the next time you see someone smile or frown, remember, you are seeing an expression of their DNA.
So that's kind of cool that they compared it with sighted and blind athletes, right? Because it kind of illustrates even further how those emotions are really innate and they're natural for us to experience. Anything from disappointment and sadness to joy, the full gamut. So we want to go in a little bit more and talk about the fantastic things that emotions can do. So the first thing that emotions can do is they can communicate. So again, with facial expressions, they help us read each other, what's going on for each other. We can empathize with each other. Our brains have what's called mirror neurons. So this helps us copy what other people are doing. So sometimes if you see somebody yawn and it makes you yawn, that's your mirror neurons in action. And that also works with facial expressions. If you've ever seen somebody cracking up and it makes you start laughing, that's a very similar thing along those lines. Emotions as motivators, we talked about earlier. Whenever we feel something emotionally, it tends to make us want to do something about it. So it can help us overcome obstacles. So if you have some sort of fear response come up and it motivates you to get out of a situation that's scary, that's the natural thing that your body has been wired to do with its connection to your emotions. And then the last thing that emotions do is they can be self-validating. So if you're feeling lonely or rejected in a situation and you feel sad, that's kind of like, yeah, you should feel sad. People like being connected to each other. And when you're not connected, that's your body's way of saying there's something wrong here. There's something that needs to change here. So this is a quote. It says, "Two porcupines huddled together on a winter's night. Closeness is necessary for survival and normal, but getting close risks getting hurt." So there's a picture of porcupines trying to kiss. And I think this is an example of how we can have really positive emotions. And again, it's really vulnerable because there's always that chance that we can get hurt when we open up and show our feelings with other people. So there's kind of these two sides of emotions. They can really be helpful in informing us as to what's going on around us. And it also leaves us open. So how do you manage the in between that? Is that, oh, did I click the wrong thing? Okay. Thanks, Wendy. Okay. So how we get bottled. This is pretty tricky because it's something that tends to happen over time. But the way it happens is when we get in a situation where we don't allow ourselves to feel a natural emotion the way that it would happen naturally, I guess. So over time, if we get into a situation where we don't want to feel that vulnerability when we're around other people, and so we push that emotion back, it gets bottled up. And what happens with that is that it doesn't go away just because you're not feeling it. It's that it kind of sits there and ruminates for a while. At the same time, when you bottle up emotions, you're bottling up information. So emotions give us a lot of information about ourselves and about how we relate to other people. And that's kind of part of your brain that you're shutting down when you're pushing those emotions into a bottle. The other problem with this is usually when we bottle up emotions, they may come out in a different form at a different time that we don't really want them to. So this can happen when, if you're feeling really sad and rejected and you don't want to show that and you shove that feeling down, later on it may come out as anger and you start lashing out at people. Again, the thing to remember about emotions is that they send us messages and they may give us information as to how we might want to act, but they don't necessarily dictate what our actions must be. So that brings us to states of mind. So we call this states of mind. There's the rational mind and the emotional mind, and in between is the wise mind. So our rational mind, it contains things like logic and facts. It uses our past experiences to inform our future decisions. And then on the emotional side, It's more of allowing your heart to take control, your heart to make decisions for you. It tends to be reactive to the situation instead of looking at everything as a whole. It tells us how we're actually feeling in the moment and uses core psychological needs. So while the emotional mind might be more reactive, the logical mind can sometimes be too logical, and then we can logic our way out of any sort of emotional experience. So what we're looking for in the middle is the wise mind that takes information from both the logical mind and the emotional mind and gives us a balance. So when we shove those emotions into a bottle, it's like shutting off half of your brain. You're turning off all the lights on the side of your brain that's emotional, so that wise mind can't really come up for you.
So the question is, why would we want to let them out of the bottle if we've gotten pretty good at putting them in the bottle? Because to let them out of the bottle, that can be very uncomfortable and doesn't really necessarily feel that good. Well, Dayna has talked about a couple of reasons that we don't want to put them in the bottle, and one is that they can pop out at inopportune times. We might miss out on the information the emotions provide. We can miss out on our positive emotions because guess what? We don't get to have the positive without the negative. There's always kind of that yin and yang. So I'm going to do a little exercise with y'all if you want. It's a guided meditation because one of the other reasons that putting things in the bottle is it takes energy to put them in the bottle and to keep them in the bottle. So this exercise might illustrate that. It's a guided meditation. So if you want to participate, that's fine. If you don't, that's fine. You can sit there quietly and rest or think about whatever else you need to do today. Or if you're participating and you find that it gets too uncomfortable, then you can just shift your attention to something else. But I would like you to get as comfortable as you can in these chairs. And you can either close your eyes or leave your eyes open, whatever's comfortable for you. If you find that you're falling asleep, you might want to open your eyes if you have your eyes closed. And just take a few full breaths. And you can bring to mind a current situation that elicits some kind of reaction. It could be anger, fear, grief, some kind of rift with your partner, a power struggle you might be having, if you have some pain in your body, hurtful behavior that you now regret. The more fully you get in touch with the charged essence of the story, the more readily you can access the feelings in your heart and throughout your body. What is it about the situation that provokes the strongest feelings? You might see a particular scene in your mind, your words that were spoken. Recognize a belief you hold about how the situation reflects on you or what it means for your future. Be especially aware of any feelings in your stomach, your chest, and your throat. In order to see firsthand what happens when you resist experience, begin by experimenting with saying no. As you connect with the pain you feel in the situation you have chosen, mentally direct a stream of no at the feelings. No to the unpleasantness of fear, anger, shame, or grief. Let the word carry the energy of no, rejecting, pushing away what you're experiencing. As you say no, notice what this resistance feels like in your body. Do you feel tightness, pressure? What happens to the painful feelings as you say no? What happens to your heart? Imagine what your life would be like if, for the next hours, weeks, and months, you continued to move through the world with the thoughts and feelings of no. Take a few deep breaths and let go by relaxing through the body, opening your eyes or shifting your posture a bit. And take a few moments to call to mind again the painful situation that you'd previously chosen, remembering the images, the words, the beliefs, and the feelings connected with it. And now direct a stream of the word yes at your experience. Agree to the experience. Let the feelings float. Hold them in the environment of yes. Even if there are waves of no, fear or anger that arise with a painful situation, or even from doing this exercise, that's okay. Let those natural reactions be received in the larger field of yes. Yes to the pain. Yes to the parts of us that want the pain to go away. Yes to whatever thoughts or feelings arise. Notice your experience as you say yes. Is there softening, opening, and movement in your body? Is there more space and openness in your mind? What happens to the unpleasantness as you say yes? Does it get more intense? Does it become more diffuse? What happens to your heart as you say yes? What would your experience be in the hours, weeks, and months to come if you could bring the spirit of yes to the invariable challenges and sorrows of life? Now release your thoughts and let your intention be to say a gentle yes to whatever sensations, sounds, emotions, or images that might arise in your awareness. So did anybody notice, or anybody want to comment on a notice that they saw between saying no and saying yes to an experience? Did anybody even notice a difference to that? Yeah.
Yeah, when I was thinking about a very angry situation, I definitely was trying to suppress that. Definitely felt well, it was hard to do. Tenseness in the stomach, chest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, even your hands right now as you're describing it, so tenseness, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, great. Thanks for sharing. Anybody else? Kind of similar? Yeah. I noticed just in reading this aloud when I'm saying no versus when I'm saying yes, I just even notice a difference in my own body just to say those different things. So that's one thing to think about, is that it does take energy to say no, and it typically does cause kind of that tenseness and that guardedness versus saying yes. And even if you don't like the experience or the emotion, saying yes, this is just what it is right now. So that's one way that you can kind of manage it and experience emotions, but also hopefully get you that idea that it takes a lot of energy to keep them bottled. Now, one of the things that Dayna and I wanted to talk about is if you're going to start letting things out of the bottle, how do you do that in kind of a controlled way? And in psychology, we have this term of being emotionally flooded, which just basically means you get overwhelmed with emotions. And it typically hits like a flood. It's all at once. You don't sometimes see it coming, and it's right there. And then you find things maybe flying out your mouth that you didn't mean to say. And you're like, wow, I can't believe I'm saying that. Or you react in a way that later on you're kind of embarrassed about or something. And so when we're flooded, we tend to kind of go offline in the front part of our brain where we have some impulse control, and we're kind of in that fight or flight part of the brain. So it becomes a very good skill to start to notice what triggers those kind of emotional flooding things for you. What's it feel like for you, so you can tell when you're heading that way, and how do you calm yourself. So, and it's really important too, as you start to feel emotions, that you know how to do this. So we wanted to spend some time talking about how do you manage your emotions so that you don't get flooded, or once you are, you can calm yourself down. So one way you can do this, and there's multiple ways, but you can change your facial expressions. And interestingly enough, when you change your facial expressions, you can change your physiology. So, you know, if you're feeling angry, you put a smile on your face or something like that. So you can see that it starts to change. You've got to hold it, and even though it doesn't feel sincere, it will change some reactions within your body. Another way to do that is to change your body. And so here, I don't know if you can read this, and this will date me because I grew up reading this comic strip, but this is a Peanuts comic strip, and Charlie Brown's standing there, and he says, "This is my depressed stance." When you're depressed, it makes a lot of difference how you stand. The worst thing you can do is straighten up and hold your head high, because then you'll start to feel better. And if you're going to get any joy out of being depressed, you've got to stand like this. So I'd like to invite you all, if you want, to just kind of hunch over, like pick a depressed pose, which is usually like this, maybe closed in. Sometimes people turn their feet in towards one another, and just sit there and notice what comes up in your body as you pick a depressed stance. Okay, so just take a few moments, close yourself off, notice what that feels like. And then I want you to spread out, change your body position. Either put your arms back or put them out, and just take up lots of space and expand your posture, and just notice what goes on in your body as you kind of expand or stretch out or put your feet up on the desk. And that's really, really quick, but in those quick moments, does anybody notice a shift in what was going on in their body? Yeah? Bit of a shift. Okay. So it really does make a difference, and there's actually a great, or I like it, it's a TED Talk that Amy Cuddy does. She's out of Harvard, and she talks about power poses and how you can change the way you're acting and actually lower your cortisol, which is a stress response, by doing some of these power poses for 2 minutes. So we did it really quick there, but if you're feeling sad or something and you're like, I got to go take a test, pick a power pose, which is spreading out and taking lots of space, and spend 2 minutes. You can go to the restroom and do that, and then go in and take your test, and you'll probably notice a difference. Again, that's changing your physiology. So go ahead and try that. So you can change your facial expressions, you can change your body language. Another way that you can change and take care of your emotions if they're getting too strong is focus on or alter your breathing. And there's a ton of different ways to do this. We've just picked one video here. So if you want to go ahead and practice this kind of breathing, this is interesting. This is Dr. Andrew Weil. You can check out how he does breathing. There's lots of different ways to do this, but feel free to try this out if I can get the...
The famous 4-7-8 breath, the relaxing breath that I teach to all patients and doctors and students and friends, another yoga breathing technique. In this, you try to keep your tongue in the yogic position, touching the tip of the tongue to the ridge of tissue just behind your upper front teeth, like that, and try to keep it there the whole time. You breathe in quietly through your nose to a count of 4, and you hold your breath for a count of 7, and then blow air out forcefully through your mouth. Helps if you purse your lips out and you make a whoosh sound when you do that. So the exercise begins by letting all the air out through your mouth. Then you close your mouth, breathe in silently to a count of 4, hold your breath for a count of 7, out through your mouth audibly to a count of 8, and you will repeat this for 4 breath cycles. Looks like this. That's it. You must do this at least twice a day. You can do it more frequently if you want, but never more than 4 breath cycles at one time, at least for the first month. After a month, if you're comfortable with it, you can increase to 8 breath cycles, and that's the absolute maximum. It's desirable to slow the whole exercise down as you practice it. What limits you is how long you can comfortably hold your breath, but as you practice that, you'll get better and better at it. And after doing this for 4 or 6 weeks, you can begin trying to use it for things. If somebody says something that pushes your button, you do this exercise before you react. It's a great way to deal with cravings. It's a great way to help you fall asleep. If you get up in the middle of the night for any reason, get back in bed, you do the exercise, you'll fall asleep easily. After 2 months, 3 months of regular practice, there are very significant changes that happen in physiology. This lowers heart rate, it lowers blood pressure, improves digestion. It is a very powerful anti-anxiety measure, in fact, much more powerful than the anti-anxiety drugs that are commonly prescribed. Takes no time, needs no equipment, very time and cost effective. Everything to recommend it, so I urge you to begin practicing this.
So he makes a point about practicing, and we're going to talk about that later, but with anything in life, it doesn't come easy. We have to practice, and the more practice we do, the more benefits we get out of things. So practicing these ways to manage your mood so that when things come up, like he said, you have that space where you're not just reacting. Dayna said that there's energy behind emotions, and there's that tendency to react, and if we can increase that gap, take that breath, and not react and use that wise mind, that can be really helpful for folks. So other ways that we can manage moods, we can use distractions, things like reading books, studying. If you can focus your mind on it, studying is really helpful because it's something you need to do. You can watch movies, TV, different things. There's tons of things on YouTube. Anybody notice the difference just watching a little bit of that? See some smiles, so I'm guessing yes, a little bit of difference. So when things get overwhelming, you can also think about what is in your environment. If you're watching things like the daily news, it's all doom and gloom kind of thing. Being able to turn on something like that on YouTube, puppies playing or babies laughing or something, just look that up on YouTube, and that can really help you manage your mood. Just even the music that was in that video, it's light and it's upbeat, music can certainly bring us up. So you want things that aren't matching your mood, you want to manage your mood, so things that are pulling you out of that. Exercise is a great way because emotions do tend to have a lot of energy associated with them, especially things like anxiety and anger, so using exercise can be helpful. Getting up and cleaning, doing the dishes, that can really help. Talking with family and friends, and it could just be about distractions.
Watch a video conference.
So, oh, when can they hear? Okay. So those are some things that you can do, because if you have a lot of things in the bottle, what you want to do is just be able to take the lid off and kind of experience them, and then put the lid back on and kind of do that in a controlled fashion. Otherwise, you could get flooded. So it's important to do it in a very controlled way if you have lots of stuff in that bottle. So let's talk about that, because you want to let them out, but you don't want to have an explosion. The key is really to tune into yourself and learn to recognize what you're feeling. Make sure that you've learned ways to manage moods and to pull yourself out of it. And then also take the time to let the lid off and experience and feel those different things. And the more you practice this, the better you're going to be able to do this in real time when you're actually feeling an emotion in a situation, and you'll be able to use that for the information that it provides. So we've got a couple other ways here that you can experience trying to let them out of the bottle.
We're going to go over a technique that's called riding the wave, and the idea behind it is that emotions come in a wave type of fashion. And sometimes it can feel overwhelming when it's coming on. And people who, for a long time, have learned how to bottle their emotions sometimes feel that if they start to let their emotions out, that they're going to take over and they're not going to be able to come back to any sort of baseline again. Like Laurie had mentioned, that feeling of flooding, but having this concern that you'll start flooding and you'll never stop. So thinking about how emotions come in waves, they rise and they get intense and then they fall again. And some of them are more shallow than others. But that's just kind of the way that they work in general. So we're going to have somebody, we're going to watch a clip on how to do this a little bit more, but we want to keep in mind that you can't really push away a wave, whether it's a sound wave or a wave of water. It just kind of like pushes through you. So just allowing yourself to ride on top of the wave can help you experience it without trying to fight against it. So things you want to keep in mind is to just identify what that energy is behind your emotion, what action is trying to get you to engage with. Determine what the emotion actually is. So if it just feels bad, trying to weed apart what is that bad feeling, what is it that's going on for you, because it's harder to understand what the message is that the emotion is trying to give you if you can't even figure out what the emotion is. So you want to express yourself. Once you identify that emotion, allow yourself to feel it and notice it non-judgmentally. So sometimes we feel like we shouldn't be feeling a certain way. So if you're like watching a movie with a bunch of friends and it gets to a really sad part and you want to cry, but then you hold back because you're like, what are these people going to think of me if I start crying over this stupid movie? So riding the wave is cutting that part out of it and not saying anything, trying to put any judgment on the type of emotion that you've been experiencing, and just let yourself feel whatever goes on in your body, feel whatever that emotion is, any thoughts that you're having, noticing those thoughts without trying to push them away. Something else that can be helpful when you're trying to let yourself feel your emotions even more is kind of like what Laurie said with your body language, is keeping your hands open and both feet on the ground. So that makes you feel more attached to your environment and more open to what's coming. And it's kind of that opposite of what we talked about, is more of that depressive type of position. Yeah, okay, so we're going to watch a clip of someone describing how to do this. Okay.
She's riding the waves of her emotions.
Myth of Freedom by Chogyam Trungpa. Great book. There is a fear that emotion might become too much, that we might fall into it. Let yourself be in the emotion. Go through it. Give into it. Experience it. You begin to go toward your emotion rather than just experiencing the emotion coming towards you. A relationship, a dance begins to develop. Then the most powerful energies become absolutely workable rather than taking you over. Because there is nothing to take over if you are not putting up resistance. So this is what this skill is really about. It's about learning to work with our pain rather than trying to force the pain away or to figure the pain out. We all know that stuff, it just does not work. We try it again and again and again, hoping that it'll work, by justifying or defending or attacking other people or analyzing or repressing. You know, we all so badly just want the pain to go away. This technique is about learning to tolerate the pain. And by tolerating the pain, it's like we have the volume switch and we can just turn down the volume a little bit. It becomes less overwhelming and less powerful. And as you start to practice this kind of awareness with your emotions, you're going to start to notice that emotions ebb and they flow. Really, the waves in the ocean is a really good analogy to me, because a huge wave comes, it crashes, then a little one comes. This is how our emotions are every moment. When we start tuning in, we notice, oh, I was a little annoyed, and then it passed. And all day long I felt really sad, but I felt really, really sad, then I felt a little bit less sad, then I felt a little bit more sad. That's how our emotions are, and it can be really useful to remember that we don't have to eliminate them, that they are moving all by themselves all the time. And it's really, to me, I think of myself when I'm experiencing a really painful emotion, like I'm standing in the ocean and a big wave is coming and I gotta lift up my feet to body surf with that wave. It's not that I stand there stuck thinking that if I close my eyes the wave isn't gonna come crash on me. It's gonna crash whether my eyes are open or not. I can't push my hands up and
Yeah. Okay, so we're getting some background noise. Trying to figure this out. But we also want to talk about some other ways to cope with feelings.
So frustrating. Why can't you say hi to us? And then he sits down right next to her. Yeah, like right next to me. And like.
Okay, well we can just mute it and move on. It's not happening. Sorry, everyone.
Well, one of the things that we could do is that we do have a few folks Zooming with us, and I think we're getting the noise from them. So if you're on Zoom, could you please turn off your audio? Because we can.
Muted it.
Oh, you muted it. Okay.
So they can't
No, that's
hear
okay.
us.
That's okay. That's another way to go.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're going to have to do that.
Okay. Do we want to give it another shot watching the video? Yeah? Do you think we can do it? All right. We'll back her up a little bit. Oh, is that right? It even mutes this? It sure does. All right. So I think we're going to move on.
That's what we're trying to do. That last week I accidentally muted.
They couldn't hear us, and so we were hesitant to go that way. Okay.
I'm sure there's a way. We haven't discovered it yet.
We're still struggling with the technology. So another way that we can learn to dip into our emotions is through mindfulness meditation. And mindfulness is all about accepting what's in the present moment, including emotions that are coming up. The two meditations, the one I read earlier and the one I'm going to read now, are both from a book by Tara Brach, who's a psychologist. She's also a meditation teacher, and this book, Radical Acceptance, is about accepting what's coming up in your life, kind of thing, whether it's a chronic illness or emotions or different things. So I think it's a pretty good book. We actually have it in a library at Counseling Services that's available for checkout for like 3 weeks, because I just think it's a really good book. But anyway, this meditation, again, if you want to participate, that's great. If you don't, that's fine. But the name of the meditation is Facing Difficulty and Naming What is True. So sit as comfortable as you can get. Close your eyes if you want, and take a few full, deep breaths. Is there some situation or issue in your life that you are grappling with? You might focus on an interpersonal conflict, financial pressure, or stress at work or school. Ask yourself, how am I feeling about this? And bring a receptive presence to your body. Pay particular attention to your throat, chest, and stomach. Is there tightness, pressure, heat? Is there a word that describes your experience? Sad, restless, shaky, afraid? There's no need to strain, to run through a mental thesaurus to find the right word. Just notice what word arises in awareness and mentally repeat it to yourself in a soft tone. Sometimes there's no label that fits the mix of feelings that you are experiencing. In this case, you might want to name one of the more dominant elements in the mix. The point is not to nail something down by getting it right, but to keep paying attention to the felt sense of what is real in this particular moment. After naming your experience, gently ask yourself while paying close attention to the sensations in your body, is this true? Does this word describe what I am feeling now? If not, is there another word? Continue in this way, mentally noting your unfolding experience and checking your body to see what is most true in the moment. You may get lost for a time in thoughts, and when you realize this, gently note planning, obsessing, fantasizing, whatever's going on, and return your attention to your body. Again, sense and name any strong emotions or sensations that you become aware of. And when you're ready, you can bring your attention back into the room. So again, the beauty of the internet, there's lots of different guided meditations out there and things. I did this very quickly, but lots of things that can help you, again, kind of dip into your emotions, learn to sit with them, direct your attention to them. You'll notice in this meditation, a lot of attention was directed at the body, what's coming up in your body, because oftentimes if we don't know what we're feeling, the body will let us know, because the body will store things or hold the tension or different things. So that's why it's important to focus on the body. Other ways to let out emotions. Talking with people is very important, and it's folks who would safely allow you to express your emotions and appropriately. Again, we don't want to react on our emotions, but we want to be able to express them. Journaling or some form of writing can be really, really powerful in a helpful way. And in fact, some people carve out 15 minutes out of every day just to write about emotions and what's coming out, and that can be really helpful. Again, using the body can be very helpful, and that mindfulness component, so things like yoga or Tai Chi, there's reasons that they've been around for so long. They really help us get in touch. Prayer can also do that, and certainly counseling can help folks get in touch with their emotions. I'm going to read a short excerpt from a book by Jon Kabat-Zinn. It's out of Wherever You Go, There You Are, because he kind of goes through a way in this little short story about how he experiences his emotions. And it's called Cat Food Lessons. I hate finding caked cat dishes in the kitchen sink along with ours. I'm not sure why this pushes my buttons so strongly, but it does. Perhaps it comes from not having had a pet when I was growing up, or maybe I think it's a public health threat, viruses and the like. When I choose to clean the cat's bowls, I first clean the whole sink of our dishes, then I wash theirs. Anyway, I don't like it when I find dirty cat dishes in the sink, and I react right away when I do. First, I get angry. Then the anger gets more personal, and I find myself directing at whoever I think is the culprit, which is usually my wife, Mila. I feel hurt because she doesn't respect my feelings. I tell her on countless occasions that I don't like it, that it disgusts me. I've asked her as politely as I know how not to do it, but she often does it anyway. She feels I'm being silly and compulsive, and when she's pressed for time, she just leaves the caked cat dishes soaking in the sink. My discovery of cat food in the sink can quickly escalate to a heated dispute, mostly because I'm feeling angry and hurt, and above all, justified in my anger. my hurt, because I know I am right. Cat food shouldn't be in the sink, but when it is, the selfing on my part can get rather strong. Recently, that I've noticed that I'm not getting so bent out of shape about this. I didn't specifically try to change how I'm dealing with it. I still feel the same about cat food, but somehow I'm seeing the whole thing differently too, with greater awareness and with much more a sense of humor. For one, when it happens now, and it still does with annoying frequency, I find that I'm aware of my reaction the moment it happens, and I look at it. This is it, I remind myself. I observe the anger as it starts rising in me. It turns out that it's preceded by a mild feeling of revulsion. Then I notice the stirrings of a feeling of betrayal, which is not so mild. Someone in my family didn't respect my request, and I am taking it very personally. After all, my feelings count in the family, don't they? I have taken to experimenting with my reactions at the kitchen sink by watching them very closely without acting on them. I can report that the initial feeling of revulsion is not all that bad, and if I stay with it, breathe with it, and permit myself to just feel it, it actually goes away within a second or two. I have also noticed that it is the sense of betrayal, of being thwarted in my wishes, that makes me mad much more than the cat food itself. So I discover it's not really the cat food by itself that is the source of my anger. It's that I'm not feeling listened to and respected. Very different from the cat food. Aha. Then I remember that my wife and kids see this whole thing very differently. They think I'm making a big deal out of nothing, and that while they try to respect my wishes when it feels reasonable to them, at other times it doesn't, and they just do it anyway, maybe without even thinking about me at all. So I've stopped taking it personally. When I don't really want cat food in the sink, I roll up my sleeves and I clean the dishes in that moment. Otherwise, I just leave them there and go away. We no longer have fights about it. In fact, I find myself smiling now when I do come across the offending objects in the sink. After all, they have taught me a lot. So what stands out to me in that reading, is that when he started noticing there was a mixture of emotions going on. And when he was able to sit with them and breathe with them, he noticed, this one isn't so bad. This one's really bad. This is what really gets me. And realizing he was able to take that other perspective of other people in the family. So a lot of our emotions come up in the context of our relationships. So this can be a very helpful practice for us too, is to start to notice them and sit with them. The other point that I'd like to make is, again, the idea about practice, practice, practice. And I am a soccer mom. Both my kids play soccer, so I pick on soccer here. So as much as I would love, I've watched a lot of soccer now between my two kids, I would love to be able to show up and just play soccer, but there's no way that anybody can do that without going through the drills. And the drills aren't always that fun, right? And they can be downright a lot of work. So when you have bottled up emotions, it's kind of like going through the drills. You got to practice a lot of things. You got to be prepared to be uncomfortable, maybe sweat and do the work. But ultimately, you'll find the payoff if you can stick with it. So, like anything in life, you need to practice it. So just in sum, I'd like to say that we all have emotions. They do have a purpose or purposes. We can learn how to manage them so that we don't have to react on them or be overwhelmed by them. And we can learn to explore, experience, and use those emotions so we can fully live our lives. Now, sometimes it's a little too hard to do that. So if you do need assistance, certainly on the Manhattan campus, we at Counseling Services would be glad to help you. Salina, you need to contact the Student Life Center. Faculty and staff, we have an EAP, and then there's certainly other options for folks. So thank you so much for your time and attention. We appreciate you coming, and if you have any questions, let us know.